Let's dive right into this explainer and unpack a truly fascinating piece of spiritual text, the famous 18th vow of Amitabha Buddha. If you're familiar with the tradition, you know the specific vow holds a massive promise. It basically says any sentient being who sincerely wants to be reborn in the Pure Land can get there just by reciting Amitabha's name 10 times. Literally, just 10 recitations. Sounds incredibly accessible, right? Almost like an ironclad guarantee. But as you'll see, this seemingly simple promise has actually sparked one of the biggest misunderstandings in the entire practice. So we're going to break down exactly what the source text says and, once and for all, clear up this massive myth. Because, well, human nature being what it is, when people hear you only need 10 recitations, a very tempting question naturally pops up. Is this the ultimate spiritual loophole? Like, can I just live my life however I want, skip all the daily practice, avoid the hard work, and just wait until the absolute very end, right on my deathbed, to knock out those 10 chants? Honestly, it's a fair question. If all it takes is 10 chants, why put in decades of effort? Well, the source text tackles this exact question head-on. And spoiler alert, the answer is a resounding no. That is absolutely not how this works. To really debunk this myth, we need to look directly at the teachings of Master Shandao. He came up with this brilliant, crystal-clear way of categorizing practitioners into different roots or capacities. You got people with superior roots. These are the folks who dedicate their entire lives to practicing and chanting. They don't wait around. On the flip side, relying on last-minute deathbed chanting, that's strictly categorized for those with the lowest roots. And this distinction is absolutely crucial. This last-minute provision is not some clever life hack for the wise. Not at all. It actually acts as a desperate final safety net designed specifically for people who just never had the karma or the chance to encounter the Dharma earlier in their lives. It's for people who literally only find out about it as they are actively dying. So it's the absolute bare minimum threshold. Definitely not a recommended retirement plan. Because think about it. Even if someone does find themselves in that last-minute scenario, the text lays out 3 extremely rigorous sequential hurdles you have to overcome to actually pull off this deathbed awakening. You really can't just casually mumble 10 times and expect a miracle. You have to perfectly meet all 3 of these conditions. And as we go through them, you're going to realize just how incredibly difficult this is to pull off in your final moments on Earth.
Condition 1 is a clear mind. To even begin, you have to be completely conscious and lucid. And let's be real, achieving that kind of clarity at the very end of life is incredibly difficult, which brilliantly illustrates exactly why lifelong practice is so deeply emphasized. Think about the physical reality of dying. It's rarely peaceful, and it's almost never entirely lucid. If illness takes over, or if something like dementia clouds your consciousness, your chance to make those 10 conscious recitations is just entirely lost. If you're heavily medicated, unconscious, or just mentally slipping away, you literally cannot generate the focus needed to fulfill the vow. The text uses this beautifully simple metaphor. A tree leaning east will fall to the east. If you spent your whole life practicing, your mind becomes deeply rooted. It naturally leans toward faith. Your conviction gets so solid that nothing can shake it. If you've done that groundwork, then even if illness strikes later, you're going to naturally fall in the direction of your lifelong practice. But if you spent your whole life doubting, overthinking, or just ignoring the practice altogether, your roots are incredibly shallow. A chaotic mind at the end of a chaotic life isn't just going to suddenly find perfect clarity.
Condition 2 is finding a good advisor. Basically, you must have a spiritual guide right by your side to prompt you. For someone who hasn't practiced all their life, the moment of death brings profound terror. We're talking sheer panic and a terrifying disorientation about what comes next. In that completely overwhelming state, you absolutely must have a spiritual guide physically right there by your bedside to urgently remind you, hurry, chant Amitabha. Without someone there to prompt you, the panic is going to completely take over. The source text uses this incredibly powerful metaphor here. Imagine a drowning man violently thrashing around in the turbulent ocean, completely exhausted, just about to go under. Suddenly, a floating log drifts by. What does he do? He grabs it with terrifying desperation and refuses to let go because it's literally his only hope for survival. That is exactly what the good advisor provides. They toss you that log in the form of a reminder to chant. Without that guide, without someone giving you that vital instruction at the exact perfect second, you aren't going to remember to chant. You'll just be swept away by the overwhelming currents of your own past karma. Condition 3 is immediate faith, because having the instruction is completely useless if you don't instantly accept it. Immediate faith means believing and accepting the Dharma instantly, without a single moment of doubt or hesitation. Even if you've somehow beaten the odds, you have a perfectly clear mind while your body is shutting down, and you miraculously have the perfect guide standing right next to you. You still have to overcome this final, absolute hurdle. Imagine hearing these teachings for the very first time on your deathbed. If your guide tells you to chant, but you hesitate for even a second, or if a thought creeps in like, is this really going to work? Is Amitabha actually going to come for me? Boom, the window closes. It is way too late. The text makes this absolutely crystal clear. If you don't believe it, or if you aren't truly willing to go to the Pure Land, even the greatest spiritual advisor in the entire world cannot save you. You have to accept it instantaneously.
To see these near impossible conditions in action, let's look at an amazing historical case study, Butcher Zong's miracle. The timeline of this Tang Dynasty story is just absolutely wild. First off, for his entire life, Zhang slaughtered cows for a living, racking up some massive negative karma. Second, as he is literally laying on his deathbed, he starts experiencing these terrifying visions of dozens of cows coming to seek revenge and claim his life. Notice just how fast this terrifying ordeal escalates. Third, in a state of absolute panic, he begs his wife to go fetch a monk. Fourth, the monk arrives mere moments later, tells Zhang that chanting can erase 80 billion yawns of heavy sins, and instructs him to chant immediately. Fifth, Zhang chants at the absolute top of his lungs. And get this, before he even finishes his 10 chants, he cries out that the Buddha has arrived with a lotus seat, and he passes away.
It is an incredible story, right? And when we analyze it, we can literally check off all three of those strict conditions we talked about earlier to understand exactly why Zhang succeeded in erasing 80 billion eons of bad karma. First, despite those terrifying visions of vengeful cows, he somehow kept a clear enough mind to know he desperately needed spiritual help, and he asked his wife for it. Second, he incredibly managed to get a good advisor, the monk, to his bedside just in the nick of time. And third, because he was quite literally cornered by vengeful spirits with absolutely zero other options, he exhibited immediate faith out of pure, unadulterated desperation. He didn't have the luxury of overthinking things. He just chanted. Now, hearing Butcher Zhang's story, you might be thinking, great, it worked for him, so for sure it can work for me. But wait, the source text explicitly and sternly warns us that Zhang's success is a miraculous, unbelievable anomaly. People who actually achieve rebirth this way are incredibly, extremely rare. We're talking maybe 1 or 2 in 10 million. Why? Well, because Zhang just happened to have the unbelievable good karma to have a wife who could find a monk instantly, plus the mental fortitude to even ask for one. Counting on all of those incredibly unlikely stars to perfectly align for you while you are actively dying is a massively dangerous gamble. The text is basically telling us that waiting for the deathbed is not some clever shortcut. It is literally spiritual Russian roulette. Which brings us to our ultimate takeaway. The text reminds us of a harsh reality. You cannot guarantee a clear mind. You cannot guarantee a perfect guide will magically appear. And you definitely cannot guarantee you won't be overcome by doubt in your final moments. Therefore, true preparation absolutely has to begin today. Every single chant you do right now, every moment you spend building faith and good karma, you're planting a seed. Because as the source so beautifully puts it, a minute of preparation during your normal life translates into 10 minutes of strength when you eventually face death. So whatever you do, don't wait for that floating log when you are already drowning. Build your ship right now. So the question is, are you prepared?